Okay. Okay, you guys see the screen okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So first things first, I pushed a bunch of code today. So let's take a quick look at what's going on, what the updates are. The biggest one is we have a new website, and Jack is to thank for this. So come here, you got this cool new video, whatever else. So we're getting there. We're looks like my test blog posts got live. We'll have to get those removed, but come in here, got a nice new login screen. All the events are always going to be here. We'll be adding content through the blog. So hopefully this is a good resource. This may last a month and then we'll probably have a new redesign, but pretty new site for everyone. If you're listening to this and you're on the wait list and you don't have access to Slater yet, let Jack or I know and we will get you added into Slater right away. Okay, so a couple of the changes in here. I think the biggest one is the snapshot functionality. So now you can save a page by creating a snapshot. Once that snapshot's created, you can hop over here. This is all of that code, so you can reference it if you've gone further, but you're running into an error and you want to come back. And then you can just click this restore code button. We'll do that. Hopefully, I don't override anything that was important to me. But now that code is restored here. So we do have GitHub integrations, which I've mostly turned off. I've got a few things here that are just turned on for me because I have access to the beta functionality. The GitHub is an important developer tool, but it's really hard to get right in the context of something like Slater, because you can have your team members, but those team members may not be, those Slater team members may not be in sync with your GitHub team members. And so there's just a bunch of edge cases that we haven't solved for. So we pretty much turned that off. It works, but it has its limitations. And so this snapshot will work for everybody. It's more in the form of how Webflow handles snapshots. And so create a snapshot whenever you're going in a direction that you're not sure about. Hop back to that snapshot at any time. That should work really well, and it's really lightweight and easy to work with. Yesterday, I was working on a project. I had not pushed the snapshot functionality out yet, and so I found myself copying this entire chunk of code, moving it into a text editor, and just having it there off to the side, just in case I ran into some issues and I wanted to go back. So I'm excited for this feature myself. The other big thing is we have some controls over your AI. So now you can use GPT-4 if you toggle this on, and you'll notice, like right now, I've got this show code only. If I turn that off and I say, write a fetch request, it's going to tell me all about it. Something's running pretty slowly because it's not coming in that quick, but it's coming in. But you'll notice like there's a bunch of explanation that the AI is giving me about this chunk of code. And if you are more advanced and are just kind of skipping over this and don't want that, you can now turn this on to show only code. And now when I say write fetch request, it's just going to give me the code that it writes. And so that's kind of nice. It comes back quicker, and if you're not reading this anyway, then it gives you more real estate and everything's better that way. This is some beta functionality that I have turned on. So I could say act like you are a cowboy. And this would send the system prompt to OpenAI, and it would the response would come back with the system prompt. This is something we put in place because there are other views we're looking at. So this is very much a developer-centric view of JavaScript. Mason, the founder of Edgar Allan, he's less of a JavaScript expert and would love to just be able to write to the AI and have the AI write the code, and then have it automatically inserted and saved. And in that world, like it would be no code, but just working with the AI. So we'll be playing around with some functionality and like figuring out those other views that will allow you to write code without actually being a developer or even having to like think about your code in this way. We'll see how far we can get with that. The AI is pretty incredible, but there are some hurdles that we'll have to figure out of just the right way to prompt the AI so that the response comes back and it's something that can be used. Another big update is the library. So this has been cleaned up a lot. This library will, you can create your own snippets and then it's available. So then you can drag it in. Like these, there's all sorts of code that I use all the time. And so this allows you to have your own library. We pulled back the functionality a little bit as far as like sharing your library, but that's coming soon. So we want to do a code snippet marketplace, or where you'll be able to like find a solution that somebody else wrote and pull it into your project. So that's all kind of in the works and is related to the library. There's a couple other updates that are kind of pointing to the Webflow app that we're working on. So the Webflow app has a lot less real estate. So we'll be making some updates. Like, the sidebars kind of controls everything. And that's related to what you'll see in the Webflow app one of these days. I think that's the bigger updates. But any questions or comments? Anything you'd like to see? I will say we love getting feedback from Twitter. So we'll be adding CSS because of feedback we're getting from Twitter, as well as the internal team. One of the things that came up as well was code wrapping. So in the past, it just would keep going to the right, but now we have code wrapping. And so you'll notice this gets pushed down a little bit. I just turned on code wrapping for everybody. I don't know if your preference is for code wrapping or for the opposite, but we will have an options. Like will allow you to kind of configure your editor in the future. There's all sorts of configurations you can put into your editor. You may like Prettify, so the fact that like it or formats your JavaScript. It's a nice feature. It's got its drawbacks. Like now, if I try to backspace or revert, it adds a bunch of like updates into your revert history, and so there are some limitations with Prettier, and so you may not even like it. You may want to turn it off. But there's all sorts of configurations that we'll be supporting in the future. Cool.
Jared, can I just ask you a question? What feature are you most excited about with Slater?
So what I released today, I'm really excited for snapshots. In the future, we are working with the newest versions of the Webflow API. And so code injection is going to be really big for us. Right now, we support like the single script. This one's not a single script project, but there are some limitations with a single script, like when it's a CMS collection, or when you're writing, or your Webflow page is in a directory. There are some challenges with that. And if you write bad code, it can impact other pages with a single script. With code injection, we'll have a lot more control over what JavaScript gets run on a specific page. So I think that's really going to improve workflow and solve some of the edge cases and questions that come up with the single script. I'm interested to see like how people like the Webflow app. So you'll have all of your JavaScript code within your Webflow project. I honestly think you're going to want to go out to Slater and just have those two browsers running simultaneously. I think it's easier, but there are times where you may need to be making updates to your Webflow project as you're thinking about JavaScript. And so having those two experiences together, I think there'll be improvements around that. Cool.
Quick question about that as well. Do you have any updates as to when the marketplace, because there seems to be a little bit of kind of working out the launch date for that, but has there been an officially released like launch date for the Webflow marketplace?
So I'm not sure what they've said officially, but there is documentation around it, and there's dates on the documentation. High level, what I know is like they're shooting for releasing it with the Webflow conf. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah, I can't remember where the V2 API documentation is, but if you dig into their documentation, they do have dates around what they're working on with the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot there. I just wondered if you had any like updates for when people can get their hands on the Slater app, and I guess that will only happen when the marketplace is live. But anyway,
exactly. And I think that's all a little bit hush hush. So I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but I don't know that I have any details beyond like what's official and on the public web. So
I was just fishing. Sorry.
Cool. So what I wanted to talk about today, it's funny, like problems kind of come in spurts. So I had two people kind of come to me with the same problem, and the problem they had is they had some JavaScript that was on the page. So let's go here, and in this, I've got some JavaScript on the page. So down here, I say document add event listener DOM content loaded, and so this one here, DOM document has loaded Webflow. So I'm just going to blow this away so that we don't have that. Let's take a snapshot of this. And then I'm going to delete this as well. So when we go out to here, what we'll see is, let's just make sure I've got everything out. Yeah, so I've got some code on the project just to show that there's a difference between what's going to be in Slater and what's going to be here. And it has to do with timing. So what we're doing, let me just even comment this out real quick. We can see the challenges with workflow around JavaScript and Webflow. This publish process is slow, but this is a smaller project, so we're pretty quick. Okay, so if we come back here, we've got just this code. This is all that should be running, I believe. And we have when the DOM has loaded, we want to just console log document has loaded. And so really straightforward. Got this as a test code somewhere. Yeah, so I do have another Slater in here, but this is what's important. So this works correctly. And the reason this works correctly is because this code is written at the bottom of the page, and this DOM loaded event has not yet fired. The problem we run into is, and this is a timing issue, so it's not consistent, but let's go back into our Slater project and let's have the same code here. And let's do it in the footer code. Let's call this Slater. And it works. And the reason it's working is because the connection's pretty quick. So it's going to parse the entire DOM. So if we look at this, it's going to start at the top and it's just going to go down, 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 down until it hits our JavaScript file here. It's going to go out to Slater, grab that JavaScript, bring it back in, parse it. And as it does that, it's going to continue down this. And once this kind of HTML is reached, then the DOM is loaded and it's going to fire that event. But what the users were experiencing was this was actually breaking. So it's not breaking now, and this is one of the problems with timing issues is they're not consistent because it does rely on how quickly the connection is working. So I can break it using a little bit of code that I wrote. So let's hop in here. Not this one. Okay, we're gonna grab all of this and okay, so we'll talk about this in a bit, but this is using ES6 wait. So we have this async that, so this function will fire. It will then wait 5 seconds, and then it will run this code. And so what's going to happen? Let's save that. Let's take a look at this. And so we're going to wait 5 seconds, and it's going to break. Didn't break. That's funny. So I swear I did this yesterday. But this DOM content loaded, it should have fired already. It should have already, that event should be complete. So I'm maybe my await stops the DOM content from event from firing. But yeah, it's crazy. It was that's why I did this last night and it was breaking. Anyway, what was happening? Let me just hop back to this code. So this was what I posted to Slack, and this is the solve for if that event has already fired. What you can say is what's the state of the document. So this might be interesting to see. Like, let's just console this. But I'm guessing what's happening is this await is actually stopping that event from completing. So I'm going to comment this out. And we're going to console this to the log. Okay, so you notice here it says still loading. And after the 5 seconds, it is now complete. Which is weird because I would have expected that to break because it is complete. But anyway, with this, what we can say is, let's just move all of this over. And I'm gonna comment that all out. So if it has already reached a state where it's no longer loading, then we'll run that function that says do something. If that has not yet loaded, then we're going to wait for this event to fire, And at that point, we're going to do something. And so this was the solve for, let me just pull this up real quick. If you're not in the Slack channel, you should join it. So here's Thomas where he said, Austin said like he had code in Webflow and it's working. And then he moved it over to Slater and it was not working. And that reason is because when it's in Webflow, it's going to read it immediately and be ready to run as soon as that page is finished loading. As soon as it goes out to external script, then it's kind of a matter of timing. Does that script come back and get parsed before that event fires? And so that's one solution for this. And again, like the challenge with timing issues is they're not consistent. And so you need to be kind of careful about understanding why things are not working. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So one reason you don't run into a lot of timing issues is because this concept called hoisting. So the way computers tend to work is they start at the top and they just go down and they read. And so if something is first in that stack, then it reads that first thing and then it moves to the next thing. And if you have your stack kind of messed up, then it could break. So if you think about CSS, it's a cascading style sheet. So you start at the top and it just goes down. And so if you have, let's say a body style that turns the background blue, and then later you have a body style that turns the background red, it's going to turn it blue, but then it's going to turn it red as it continues to go down. JavaScript works similarly in a lot of ways, but it does have this concept called hoisting. And what hoisting does is it takes all of your variables and it moves them to the top before it actually parses your JavaScript. And so these two examples are interesting. So here we're defining X all the way down here. And so if you're thinking about the computer going down line by line, it shouldn't know that X is a variable and it should break. But because it hoists everything, this X variable gets moved to the top and then it parses it. And so this is first and then it keeps coming down. So both of these examples work because of this hoisting concept. And so it's just important to understand that generally it's going to start from the top and move down, but JavaScript recognizes that that's a challenge and it can break your code. And so it has this concept of hoisting to solve some of your problems. One similar issue that came up last week is if we come over to this, jQuery is built into Webflow projects. So where they put the jQuery is at just before the closing body tag. And we had a client who needed jQuery in order to run some tracking tool. And the tracking tool was in the header. And because it had a dependency on jQuery, we ran into an issue because the tracker would load up in the header. And then as the DOM got loaded, jQuery would come later, but the tracker would break already before the jQuery loaded. So what needed to happen is this jQuery needed to move up to the top into the header. The problem is we're not in control of where jQuery gets loaded within the Webflow project. Berno, did they ever solve for that? Maybe Berno's not on the.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so they had some workaround in the back end that was sort of a quick fix, and for now they're just gonna leave that as the more long-term solution. But we can definitely suggest this, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I have a better solution. What they're probably doing is they may be loading two separate versions of jQuery twice. just because this is a dependency in Webflow, we just have no control over removing that and or moving it.
Mm-hmm. So I also have a question with regards to the jQuery library that's included in Webflow. Is that the latest jQuery library?
I think it is. I imagine they update it. So the last stable release would be 3.7, it looks like. So they're on 3.5, what I was just seeing. So it is pretty up to date.
And is there a risk of causing issues or conflicts if you like load the latest library along with their built-in version?
I think performance is the biggest issue. You don't want to load like a bunch of extra code if you don't need to. I'm not aware of any conflicts that would arise because you had jQuery twice on the page. But yeah, I imagine it would work, and it's just less performant.
Okay.
Cool. So the right place to put your JavaScript in general is at the bottom of the page. So just before the closing body tag. And the biggest reason that's the best place to put it is because it allows the browser to parse everything and load the page for the user. JavaScript can be slow. And so if you have it up in the header, then it's going to have to parse that JavaScript before it parses the HTML and the CSS. And so it's just mostly a user experience issue. There are times where you need your JavaScript in the header, and that's specifically for times when you want to like using, let's say, Google Analytics. Google Analytics wants to start a timer as soon as that page begins to load. So then it can, it can track that entire user experience, as opposed to, like, let's say that Google Analytics is at the bottom. The user, in theory, could quickly click on a link and go to that next page, and Google Analytics wouldn't know because it hadn't finished parsing. So if it's at the top of the page, then it is able to track more of that user experience. And there's a number of tools that we use that our clients ask us to implement, and a lot of times those have to be up in the head. So, any questions with any of that? Okay, so one other thing I want to bring up is set timeout. Something I see from JavaScript developers, especially beginning JavaScript developers, they'll find something's not working. And so they'll put a set timeout into their code, and then it starts working. If you see a set timeout, it's not going to be as quick as a proper solution, and two, it could fail because you don't really know the timing of an issue. So one example, maybe you're going out to fetch some data, and within your experience, it takes less than 1 second to do that. And so you set that timeout to 1 second, and it's working for you consistently. But as soon as you get another user who has a slower network, it takes them 3 seconds. And so their experience is breaking every single time because the set timeout fires before that data is retrieved or whatever. So if you're ever thinking, okay, it's not working, but if I use the set timeout, then it starts working, definitely question that solution and try to figure out a better way. There's kind of two big things that cause those timing issues. One is, and probably the bigger one, is the network. So if you're going out to retrieve something, you may be on a really fast network and it goes quickly, and so you're not seeing those problems. But as soon as you, like, let's say you get on your phone and you've got a crappier network, or someone's just in a location that doesn't have that high-speed internet, that network the variable can be large. It can take split second, less than a second on a good connection, where it can take 10 seconds on a slow connection. So making sure that you're not solving just for your experience of being at your home desk and having a good connection and everything. The other thing is the quality of the device that's running. So I'm running a MacBook 12 or a MacBook Pro. It's getting a little bit old as I'm streaming. My browser really can struggle. So 2019, so getting on 4 years. But yeah, you may have users who have kind of really old MacBooks, PCs, whatever, that run a lot slower. And so you may have different experiences on and have breaking code if they are using those older devices. One thing that's a little bit related to timing, but may not be, let's go back to here. I'll leave this off, but let's take this code. And again, this may or may not break it, but within the head, if I have, so this code is going to get the submit button. So if we look at this, it's going to get this at the end of the page, the submit button, and we're going to have a click event on that. So let's save this and let's see if this breaks or not. Okay, so it does break. And the reason this is breaking is because it's looking for this submit button before that submit button is loaded. And then it's trying to add an event listener to something that's not there. So what we can do here is, if this moves to the footer code where the 1175, I deleted it, but I didn't save it. Okay, so now it's working, and like I click on that and I console that to the log. And again, that's because here in the footer code, that button has loaded, and so I can grab it. Here in the header code, that button has not yet loaded, and so I can't grab it. So if I come back here, one solve that I can do to at least, this doesn't actually fix the problem, but if it's not there yet, this will do, like adding this question mark will, so that click event's not working, but you notice the error's not being thrown. This is something that came up on Felix's project the other day when I was reviewing some of his code. You can add this. So this question mark is going to check whether there is a value here. And if there's a value, then it will run. If there's no value, then it just stops it from running. And so this is kind of a nice little help. I think it came out with ES6, ES5, the latest JavaScript release. And it's a reason why jQuery is nice. It's because it will fail gracefully. But this is, if you're just using raw JavaScript, this question mark can help. If you go into your console and you're seeing red marks, let's see what that warning was exactly. So cannot read property of null. So it's trying to add that event listener to that button. But yeah, so if so you can write like a if statement around that and handle it differently based on whether that is there or not. But just recognizing that where your code is matters, and if it's not yet loaded, then you're not able to do something like write an event listener on it. The last kind of category of problems that I run into when it comes to timing is related to Webflow specifically. So a Webflow form is a good example. Where do I have a Webflow form that I can pull up? I meant to get this, but this has come up on an office hours in the past. Does anybody have a Webflow form that I can look at? Anybody been working on one lately? But the big thing is, let's just start writing some of that code. So if you have a form and you do .submit on a regular,
sorry, do you just want a staging link or do you want live link?
Either would work.
Okay, I can send you a staging link.
Yeah, please. So you can write jQuery that this is probably project in the works. Where's a form on this, Bruno?
Register now.
Cool. And this is a Webflow native form.
Yes.
Looks like, yeah. So we would get let's grab the form. Looks like this is it. So I could have this, and I could do a prevent default. So this would stop the form from running, from submitting. So let's just move this over into this. So in theory, what this should do is when I click this registration, the form should not submit, and it should just log this console. But the problem we have is that doesn't work, and it's because this is not a regular form. This is it is a regular form, but Webflow JavaScript takes over before we have control of it. So you'll notice, like, this is the Webflow native validation. So they're using that submit event before we can use that submit event. So we're just kind of left out in the cold, and our code is not running. And that all has to do with like the timing of how these different, how the JavaScript gets loaded. So this is I think this is the Webflow JS right here, and our Slater code would get loaded after it. And so for whatever reason, and I don't know the full details of it, but it's just that the Webflow JS takes precedence over our JS. And so we're not able to use this submit event on a form. And so what I've done in the past is I just use a click event. If we use this as a click event, that click event happens before that submit event happens. And so in this case, like, you'll notice our code does work. One kind of edge case that came up when we talked about this in the past is I don't have the like just pressing enter. I guess you can press enter on a form, and let's try that real quick. So anyway, there's keyboard support that Webflow offers, and if we're using the click event, then we have to write additional code to handle that keyboard support. Related to this is any of the components, like the slider or the tab component. In the past, I would try to do stuff off of the, I would try to handle the update. But what I've figured out is the easiest thing to do is just try not to fight with Webflow. Let them run their JavaScript, and then so what we could do, what I tend to do now is, instead of like trying to do something on the click event, I just do this .click, and so we're pretending like we're the user clicking on something, that didn't work, but maybe that first. Shouldn't that take it? Anyway, I was trying to close that modal. What did I get wrong there? Why is that not working? Seems like it should work,
might,
but
yeah, it might still be a work in progress issue on my end.
yeah. Anyway, not exactly sure what that is, but using that click event. So you pretend like you're the user, click it, and let Webflow JavaScript do its thing, and then you can handle it afterwards. So there's that piece. Like, I find myself fighting with Webflow JavaScript from time to time. What I find a bigger issue is any of the what's it called, FinSuite tools. Like those, I find myself fighting with pretty much every time I use them, because I get pulled in when we need some configuration beyond what the normal configuration is. And so, yeah, if you're using a separate library, someone else's code, you may not have control over the timing of how things happen. The best is when a library has an event that you can latch onto. But just recognize, like, if you're working with other people's code, you may not have full control of what that timing is. So it does become an issue from time to time for me. Anything you guys are thinking about? Are there any issues that you run into that you think is related to the timing of your JavaScript? And I think the best way to identify it's a timing issue is if it's just like really odd, like you can't figure out what's going on, and if it's variable, like your network may be running one way one day and it breaks another day. So I will say, like, the timing issues, they're the worst to run into, and you got to kind of get clever how to solve them. One solution that I've come to a couple of times, and I don't recommend it, but if you do find yourself running into kind of a sticky timing issue, is there is this idea of a mutation observer. This may be a lot easier now that AI is available, but can you write a mutation observer that tracks the dot, let's just say green class or element? So this mutation observer, it's going to track like DOM changes. It's not easy to work with. Like, I've run into issues of like caching where you expect something to be working, but it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because like the cache is somehow is having some issue, and I've like had to restart it in browser, and then it just starts working. I don't want to get into this because I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I have kind of struggled through some timing issues around this using a mutation observer. So if you're, I think the reason I came to this one time is we had used FinSuite's, one of their tools, and something was happening. It was like filtering, and then we had to have something happen after that filter happened. But FinSuite didn't have any events to work off of, and so I had kind of created my own event using a mutation observer. So this gets sticky. Like, I tell you, if you're using set timeout, then you're probably not solving it right. This may or may not be the same, where if you're getting to where you're using a mutation observer, give it a second thought and see if there's a better way to solve it. So we're almost up on time. I don't know if Matt has been able to join yet. He had a question on some code of his, and I thought we could look at it together.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep. How's it going?
Good.
Awesome.
Let me pull up your project 1 second.
Sure.
Before I have you explain everything, let's run through a little bit. So what I can do here is I can open the Slater. So I'm going to do Command P and just type Slater. That's going to give us the JavaScript file. And what we're doing, I think I saw it down here, is you put in an address and that's going to calculate something for you. Let's start from the very beginning. So this calculate delivery costs, that gets fired on this event listener. So on the click. So we're going to use this 1600, deliver something to the president, looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the good thing is, like, I ran through this once. I don't know all the details, and Matt will fill us in a second. But like here, we have a start location. Is this where you live, or is this like an office? Or
no, it's just another random location, basically.
Cool.
It's closer to my house, I guess.
Yeah, and we're using Mapbox.
Yep.
So if you're not familiar with Mapbox, it is pretty cool.
I'm not familiar with it either, to be honest. It's been interesting unpacking it, but yeah, it's super powerful.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It's like cooler than Google Maps in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It does like these 3D views of things. I actually wanted to like start making art with it, because you can actually render like 3D views. Like I live in the mountains, and so I can render 3D views of the mountains and like change colors and do different things. So super powerful, definitely. Pretty cool. This promise all, this is kind of a voodoo JavaScript. I don't understand this at all, but did Slater write this for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it's going to fetch this. So it's doing an API call to Mapbox, and a promise is essentially saying like something's coming. We'll let you know when it's ready. And yeah, the syntax is just really kind of odd, but if it works, it works. So I'm going to add another breakpoint. So we let the browser go out to the server and grab whatever, and then come back. And so now we have a start location data. So let's take a look at this. So this is coming from the API, and it's got these features. I don't really know what they are. But yeah, like a ton of data, which I'm sure you could do all sorts of cool stuff with. But let's keep moving down this. So it looks like you were able to parse this return data to get coordinates. So I guess that's a lat long for the start location and the end location. And then we're going to go and do another API request. This time we're using the driving endpoint. So we're
the matrix. Yeah, it's the matrix API actually. Because the matrix is just data, so it's just grabbing like travel times basically, because that's all I need. I don't need like turn-by-turn directions or anything like that. Okay.
So this is where you run into issues, I notice. So we do get the data back, which is great. And what I see here is if I run this if statement, it's going to come back undefined. So data distances is undefined. And so there's no length. We just talked about this question mark thing. One thing you can do is you can say question mark, and that's just like consolidated. It's doing
same
kind
thing.
of cool to, it gives you, like it's exactly what it's doing. So it's checking if that's there, and then it's running the length on that if it's available. So What I noticed though, if I look at this data, is there is no distances. So I should see distances as one of these kind of 4 options. But if I dig into any of this, like there is a distance here in destinations. This duration, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it looks like it may be, no. Yeah, I don't know what the duration is. Probably time in seconds.
I know one of the things it was supposed to do was the return data from the matrix would be in meters, and it was supposed to convert that to miles.
Interesting. So I see there's 2 separate distances, and I don't know what the difference between destination and source is, but that's probably where we need to look. So what you're trying to do is just get directly to this distances, but what you really need to do is figure out whether it's sources that you're referring to or whether it's destinations. And you'll notice, data sources, it comes back with 2 entries, which I'm not sure what those are, but if you do this, then now you can get the distance. And so I don't know which one's the right distance.
Would it be the distance between the 2 points? Or you're saying there's 2 results essentially of a distance number coming back?
Yeah, so you'll have to look at the documentation, and there's data sources and data dot destinations. And I don't know why there's 2 of them, which is kind of weird, but let's see if these are the same. So it's just 2 different ways of representing it, it looks like. So my guess is I don't know why there'd be 2 though. Like sources and destinations, I could see sources being like the starting point and destinations being the ending point. And so maybe it is just like, I don't know what 17 versus 133 is. But in theory, you can figure that out. And let's just say it's the first one, so the 17. Then we can look at what you're trying to do here. So you're trying to get data distances 0, 1. So let's say travel distance is equal to this one. Now we have travel distance, there's going to be that 17. And what's this number here?
That's the equation to convert meters to miles. That's just
So let's do, for whatever reason, var and let are kind of weird about doing it in the console like this. So this doesn't seem right, does it? Because 17 seems like a small number.
From Wisconsin to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. So those don't seem right. So we may need to look at this endpoint and make sure we're getting what we expect to get. But let's say that this is correct. So here's our travel distance in miles. And so our cost would be, were you going to do anything with the cost, or is it just the travel distance in miles? It's probably let's say times, that's $100.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't see that actually in there.
So you're pretty close. The only issue you're running into is this distance isn't here. Maybe it's supposed to be if you're looking at the documentation and this endpoint just needs to be updated, or maybe you have to dig into the data like we just did and then make updates to this. So you're real close, but I don't know what the exact answer is. It's just something you got to get a little more familiar with the Mapbox API.
Okay. And that should be in their documentation in theory of like what that data should look like coming back and understanding why it would be sending back to sources. It should be in there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So what was it was the Matrix API?
Yeah. So if you go to navigation,
so navigation.
up at the yep. Yeah, there you
go. Destination sources, fallback speed. So use the coordinates at given index as the possible values or semicolon. Yeah, we probably should do this offline, but yeah, so this is what you should be getting back is this distances. So your API endpoint, maybe you need to make an update too. So you're supposed to send in this stuff and you should be getting this back. So the response. So yeah, it looks like you're not getting the right response back because you do get durations and source or destination and sources. So maybe you just have to add some parameters to the endpoint to get that destination or that distance back.
Okay. Yep.
Cool. Well, we're at time. Any questions before we hop off? Any other issues people are thinking about or JavaScript questions?
Nope. Appreciate you diving into
everybody
that.
Go. Yeah, see if you can figure out anything with the docs. Ping me on Slack if you have more questions.
Sounds good.
Also, guys, Alan's going to be on the live stream tomorrow as well. He's going to be showing off all his amazing Slater goods. So yeah, if you guys want to come along tomorrow, come along tomorrow. But it will also be a live stream, so you can check it out on YouTube after the fact.
Awesome.
Excited for it. Okay, well, good seeing everybody, and we'll be checking in with you soon.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.